Today we're driving the 2025 Honda Civic Hybrid Sport Touring Sedan. This is rated for 50 miles to the gallon in the city, 47 miles to the gallon on the highway. Over the last 600 miles, this Civic has averaged 47.2 mpg, which is not too shabby. It is a 2-liter naturally aspirated Atkinson cycle inline 4-cylinder that's mated to 2 electric motors, one as kind of a motor generator, the other as a traction motor, and that's kind of paired with this eCVT transmission that puts power down to the ground. It's a very similar hybrid setup to the Accord and the CR-V, just packaged a little bit differently because of the Civic's smaller size. It results in a very efficient vehicle to drive, and it makes decent power. It actually is a little bit more powerful and has more torque than the Civic Si. Combined power output with the gasoline engine and the electric motors is 200 horsepower with 232 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 should happen in the low 6 seconds, and it's just a very nice car to drive. I've spent all week in this. Let's talk about what it's been like to live with. We'll walk you guys around it and give you guys some driving impressions later on in this video. Let's start on the outside. This Civic Hybrid is painted in urban gray pearl. We have 18-inch wheels wrapped with 235 40 R18-inch Continental Pro Contact tires. Nice looking wheel design. I like this machine finish. Kind of an anthracite. It reminds me a little bit of my Volvo 850R wheels from back in the day. Similar design there. Nice 7-spoke. I like it. We have some changes for the 2025 model year Honda Civic. Redesigned front end. One thing that I've noticed with this front end is the bumper seems to be a little bit higher. We have slightly better approach angle from this Civic. Inside we have an updated infotainment. The rest of the Civic sedan is pretty much unchanged. We have a slightly stiffer chassis, retuned suspension. Let's start in the back. We'll take a look at trunk space. Nice big trunk, pretty wide here. Honda really needs to start adding spare tires into their cars. This fix-a-flat kit is just a bit of a disappointment for a car that is daily driven. And with 18-inch wheels, you'll either hit a pothole or run over a nail, and you're going to be pretty much left stranded in this car, unfortunately. There is room for a spare. There's even a threaded hole to bolt it in. Come on, Honda, just give us a spare tire, please. And thank you. We can fold down those seats, 60/40. Pull these levers to do that. Otherwise, pretty good trunk space in the back of the Civic Hybrid. The hybrid nature of this car doesn't impede on interior cargo volume at all because everything is pretty much under the back seats. So that is pretty nice. This takes 87 octane. We've got a good amount of back seat space here. I'm 5'10". This is my seating position. Lots of room to stretch out, put my feet underneath the seat even when it's lowered a bit. We also get the Bose sound system in this Civic, and it sounds really nice. Armrest back here. I mean, pretty much the only thing we're missing are air vents. Easy to get in and out of. Nice ingress, egress. Let's take a look under the hood. So I already kind of gave you guys the rundown of this powertrain, but ultimately it results in a really nice to drive hybrid. It has the smoothness and the seamlessness of an electric vehicle. You just hear a little bit of engine noise in the background occasionally. We'll give you guys some more driving impressions, but I think as a hybrid product, this drives really, really well. It's probably not as efficient in the real world as the numbers would suggest, but it's very comfortable. It's pretty quiet on the road, and on the highway you can easily get 47, 48 miles to the gallon if you keep your speeds reasonable. All right, let's hop inside. We'll go over some of the changes here with the new infotainment. We've got a button right here to pop the trunk, traction control off, a physical gauge cluster brightness and dimmer switch right there, which I love for night driving. And you guys know me, we've done dozens of Civic videos over the years. We love this new interior. This is just a great well-designed cabin Lots of physical controls. Everything is laid out with these fantastic climate knobs that make a very satisfying click. Here's our reverse camera. Nice and wide angle. Love that. Drive mode selection is right down here. You can choose between normal, sport, individual, which is nice. We can customize those settings right here. You can change powertrain, steering, engine sound, and your gauge cluster. And then you have an eco mode at the bottom of those settings. And actually, I've mostly been driving this Civic Hybrid this week in eco mode. Throttle response is a little bit more muted, but it's very smooth to drive, and seems to spend a bit more time in EV mode too. You get your parking brake down here, brake hold feature, a little bit of storage here in the center console / armrest. Actually, a pretty deep space down there. Nice big cup holders, wireless charging right here. That does seem to be an improvement over my Type R. It just seems to work better and kind of interact with the wireless charging element more reliably, which I appreciate. And then we have this new Google-based infotainment system. It's faster, it's more responsive. CarPlay is wireless, that's worked well all week. You've got Google Play. Google Maps is your native navigation, which works really well. I'm a fan. And you still get some physical buttons over here to the left to, go back, select tracks, change your volume. It all works very, very well. You can make CarPlay full screen or get this little side menu right here. That's nice to have. 2 USB-C ports right here, a 12-volt, 180-watt cigarette lighter port. Heated seats. Look at that. Finally getting things that the Canadians have been getting all this time. Good-sized glove box. This has a sunroof. That's part of the Sport Touring package. Nice place to put your sunglasses up here. Good visors with nice coverage. They slide. Rear view mirror. I mean, it's a Honda Civic interior. It's got everything you need. And I think it's time to take it for a drive. Off we go. Aside from the hybrid nature of this car, it drives pretty much like all the other Civics. It handles well. We've got a good amount of power here with this hybrid. The way the powertrain acts and behaves feels very similar to the new Accord, which you can only get in a hybrid. We're in EV mode right now. You can see that with this little icon right down there on the gauge cluster. And while the battery has a decent state of charge, you can see a little charge meter right there to the left, you can get a decent amount of power out of this in EV mode. The engine will periodically kick on at lower speeds to charge the battery up a little bit more or give you power if you floor it. But for the most part, you don't really notice it or hear it unless if you're dipping into the throttle a little bit more. It's a pretty quiet powertrain and one of the smoothest hybrid vehicles I think I've ever driven. NVH seems to have been improved here a little bit too. I'm noticing less impact noise over potholes, less wind noise on the highway. It feels pretty good. Ride quality is nice, even on these 18-inch wheels. Pretty well controlled over bumps, potholes, not a ton of body roll. The front end is nice and sharp. I mean, this Sport Touring isn't really intended to be sporty, but you can have some fun in it behind the wheel. Here are your different gauge clusters. There's really not that much of a change, if I'm being honest. Sport mode just kind of turns everything a reddish hue. You do have these paddle shifters behind the wheel, and those control your level of regenerative braking. If you're just in eco or normal mode, you can use that to kind of decelerate up to a traffic light or stop sign or in stop and go traffic. But as soon as you hit the accelerator pedal, whatever regen level you've set will kind of just bleed away and vanish. If you put it in sport mode, that will remain. So you can kind of use this as not quite a one-pedal driving system, but a way to slow down using regenerative braking, which is nice. Sport mode gets a little bit touchy off the line if you're used to driving around in eco mode all the time, but it's still a very usable drive mode. You can hear there, with a little bit more throttle, we're getting some simulated shifts from this eCVT. Let's see how it handles when pushed around a corner. There's also a little bit more piped-in engine noise in sport mode. We'll listen to that here, merging onto the highway. Alright, that's a bit of a gimmick. For the most part, in normal mode or eco mode, the engine's going to be pretty quiet.
Right lane, blocked ahead.
We do have updated Honda sensing systems, so the adaptive cruise control and the lane keeping assist is slightly improved. Adaptive cruise control on this is still too conservative for my tastes. I always feel like I'm kind of holding up the people behind me. The car seems to leave too much space to the vehicle in front of it, and it's just a little bit too heavy on the brakes. And you can see what it's doing with this little icon right down here. You can see when I put my turn signals on, when I put my brakes on. Show you guys what regenerative braking looks like at its max setting. It's not a ton of deceleration, but it is some. If you live somewhere that has hills, unlike here in Michigan, it could be useful when just kind of coasting down a mountain or something like that. Brake pedal feel. It's okay. I think it gets a pass. I don't really have any major complaints about it this week. Sometimes it is a bit tricky to modulate at lower speeds, but I have no issue really with the way this pedal feels. It's fine. Throttle tuning is really well calibrated, super smooth, super easy. There's a nice kind of difference between drive modes from eco to normal to sport. Individually, you can set whatever you want. My preferred driving mode is eco mode. It's actually, I think, a pretty nice overall setting for this car. It suits the character, and it still gives you good power if you need to merge onto the highway or make a pass. Steering is pretty light. Sport mode, it weights up a little bit, but I've always enjoyed the steering rack in the new Civic. I think it's pretty well tuned and calibrated. There's a little bit of feel at speed. When you chuck this into a corner, it weights up nicely. It's good steering for a car in this class. Just some normal acceleration there. You can hear just how quiet this powertrain is. And there's plenty of power here to get up to speed. Lane keep assist works quite well in this new Civic. I think that's probably the biggest improvement here with the Honda sensing systems. Again, not loving the adaptive cruise control, but it works in a pinch, and you can quickly choose between adaptive or non-adaptive cruise control with this button on the steering wheel too. Highway speeds, it's quiet, not a lot of tire or wind noise. I did a pretty long trip in this earlier this week, driving about 150 miles in a day, and I was very, very comfortable on the highway, and it got very impressive fuel economy too. If you keep this at around 70, 75 miles an hour, you should be averaging close to 48 miles to the gallon. If you're kicking your speed up a little bit more, you'll probably expect somewhere in the mid to low 40s. Really good acceleration off the line too. A lot of torque here. Show you guys what it's like from a dig. We'll even go under sport mode here. Yeah, it's nice. For how complex this hybrid system sounds on paper and when you explain it, in reality, it just operates in the background and just kind of does its thing. You'll notice that periodically, in pretty much all driving scenarios, you'll just randomly switch into EV mode. Even at 75 miles an hour on the highway, it'll just kick into EV mode for maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds, steady state cruising, and your fuel economy will bump up a couple, percentage here and there. It works. It's great. I think the only time when the motor is directly driving the wheels is at highway cruising speeds, just because that's a bit more efficient. But it just manages everything in the background and kind of just does its job without you really noticing it. Sometimes there is a little bit of inconsistency with your pedal inputs and what you hear from the engine, but honestly, the powertrain is so quiet here. It's nothing like what we used to experience with the Honda hybrid systems. You barely really even notice it. This feels like a very normal hybrid vehicle. Probably my favorite thing about this Civic Hybrid is just how smooth the acceleration is. It's completely seamless. There are no brakes for shifting. There's no weird issues with throttle calibration or tuning. It has the smoothness of an EV off the line, and there's something really satisfying about that. Overall, it's been a great car to live with this week. I think this is one of the best daily drivers out there right now. This top trim Hybrid Sport Touring is just shy of $33,000, and I think the regular Sport trim is 28 or 29 grand. So you're spending a little bit more than the base Civic, about $2,500 more per trim for the hybrid, but it could be worth it for the extra refinement and fuel savings. At the end of the day, I don't think you're going to be too far off from what the 1.5 turbo is able to achieve in terms of fuel economy. That is a really efficient motor, but the extra torque, smoothness, quietness here, I think is a big win, and that in its own could be worth the extra money that you'd be spending for one of these. So really the only got you, I think, that I've heard with these new Civics is there have been quite a few rattles in their interiors that owners have complained about. I know Type R and Civic Si owners have talked about it a little bit on forums. This week, this hybrid sedan has been completely silent. No rattles, no shakes. Of course, it only has 1,700 miles on it, but hopefully Honda has done some work to kind of tighten up the interior in here and reduce rattles and reduce noise, just because there is such low NVH in this car at speed now. So it's not as loud as it used to be on the highway, which is nice. It's a noticeable change that Honda's made here. Let's walk you guys around this car one more time, and then we'll wrap up the video with a quick sound system test. Here's what your key looks like. Got a button to pop the trunk. Show you how quickly CarPlay connects here. Pretty much immediately. All right, we'll go into our music. quick taste of the Bose. Sounds pretty much the same as all the other Bose systems have sounded in other Civic models over the last few years. It's a great sound system, probably one of the best in class, and really nice to have in this sport touring trim. I'm excited to drive the Civic hatch hybrid. I think that's probably the packaging that I would want to go for, just for that added practicality. But this sedan is probably quieter just because you get rear seats and a trunk and, you know, a separated space back there. So inherently, the sedan would probably be a little bit quieter and maybe a little bit more efficient too. Better aerodynamics. I don't know. That's something I have to look up, is the fuel economy between the hatch and the sedan. But if the sedan body style works for you, this has been a great car to live with this week. Super easy, super functional, very comfortable. It's amazing how good cars have gotten at this price point. This is just one of the best values for money out there, I think. You kind of get the best of everything with this car. You get the power of the SI, but with more torque, the best fuel economy, the best drivability. It still handles great. It's still fun to drive because it's a Civic. And you get good tech, good features, everything you kind of want in this sport touring trim. It's a really, really nice vehicle for 33 grand. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. We'll wrap up there. We'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.